welcome to today, guys. I don't know if I even started that right. It said 1 second after I said a couple words.
They at least heard today.
Okay. Today. So, what's going on? This is the first time Chris and I are making a video. Part of our personalities is we like to argue and we always like to be right. And we disagree on everything.
Yeah.
Unless it's video games or food, then we're probably going to disagree. And so we like to talk about that as mannerly as possible without actually being at each other's throats.
Yep.
So, today we're going to talk about something that's just recently happened. A little bit of background. My name is Brandon Dobler. I grew up in a Christian family. My dad is a pastor. And I take the Bible as a literal translation of the truth. And I take it for the whole truth. Any problems I have in life, I feel like it has the answers to it.
Sure.
And so you could say I'm classified as a Christian and conservative.
Sure.
So go ahead.
I grew up in Methodist household. My dad was a pastor also. I've kind of branched away, ended up more agnostic, a liberal agnostic, if we were going to classify. And yeah, like Brandon said, we argue a lot. We work together, if you can't tell. So we have to keep civil. And I think because our conversations stay pretty civil, we've actually found some common ground on a lot of things.
Yeah. And sometimes we don't, but we just agree to disagree.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. Get awareness out, show people you can talk about these things without wanting to kill each other or killing each other.
Right.
And go from there.
Right.
So today's topic, we're going to do gay marriage.
Yep.
Just passed the Supreme Court. Gay marriage is legal in all 50 states. Of course, we have different views and opinions on it. So, Brandon, you got a couple questions. I got a couple questions. You want to go first?
Yeah, so I feel like I share the unpopular opinion right now. I do not support gay marriage. Now, disclaimer, just because I don't support gay marriage does not mean I resent gay people.
Yeah, Brandon's a super nice guy. He's not the guy that's going to be God.
Yeah, I feel like the extremists out there kind of ruin it for Christianity.
Yep, I agree.
I hate gay people no more than I hate liars.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's classified as a sin. You know, stealing is a sin, lying is a sin.
Sure.
So, for me to pull them separately and have a different extreme view towards them is a little ridiculous.
Yeah.
I am allowed to have gay friends. I'm allowed to love gay people.
Mm-hmm.
I just make my point aware that I do not support the marriage between the two.
Sure.
So, we figured we'd start off with some questions. And I think first question for me is, why do you think the government's role is to define what marriage is? Why is this the government's responsibility?
Good question. I think the government got involved when we started doing tax breaks and tax incentives for people that were married. I think once we did that, we took the sanctity out of marriage, and if there was any to begin with. And I would also say that when we started penalizing people on their marital status, like if your loved one was in the hospital, you wouldn't necessarily be able to see them if you were married. And for a gay couple, lesbian couple, where marriage wasn't recognized in a state, they weren't able to, share in the final moments with someone that they loved, or they weren't able to be classified as a dependent. So for tax reasons, for just social reasons, like being with, that's the reason I think the government had to do something about it and provide a one-time ruling for everybody instead of leaving it state to state.
Okay, I feel like that's fair. Yeah, we'll leave it at that.
Fair enough.
All right, so you can go ahead and shoot me something.
All right. So now that it's passed, I would say, does this change what marriage is to the church, or does it, or was it already changed when the government got involved? I mean, when did it? Does this change what marriage is to the church?
I feel like it definitely puts the church in a hard spot. It won't change what the church defines marriage as, because we define marriage as God ordained. And so us believing that God designed marriage and being that he designed it between a man and a woman, I feel like we will always see it as that way. And that's where the struggle is now. Just like the federal government views on marijuana, it's like, how can it be legalized by the state but not the federal government?
Sure.
I think the issue is the church will always see it as a problem, and the state will no longer see it as a problem. And that causes conflict. I don't think the church will change their views. At least there are some churches that will support gay marriage, and
sure.
I don't believe in that. I believe they're altering the scripture. But I feel like it won't change the definition of marriage. It'll make it harder. So because the church is forced to recognize gay marriage as legal, because it is, it makes it hard for them in terms of if a gay person came into a church and asked to be married, that's against the church's views in most cases. And so then the church is put in a situation where they're forced to go against their own beliefs if they're told to allow gay marriage.
Yeah. And I actually agree with Brandon on this one. I don't feel that churches that are against gay marriage should have to perform it. And I know Indiana recently had all the stuff about the cake and whether you should do a cake for the
right.
kid.
Do you have the right to choose your clientele?
Yeah, and that can be a different debate me and him have because we disagree, I'm sure. But as far as churches go, I think that's a different ballgame. I mean, that they should not be forced to do outside their faith. I mean, I think that churches should have the right to decline wanting to have someone married.
But you can see where that's going to become an issue, though. I guarantee you someone's going to take that to a legal issue.
I do. And to that, I would say, if you want to get married, don't make it a point. Get married because you love somebody, not to prove a point.
Right.
Like,
if you're marrying somebody to
spite someone else or
to make an issue, then you're not marrying them for the right reason.
You're doing it wrong. We don't support that. We agree. We agree on something.
I'll take it.
That's good for me.
Okay. Do you feel the definition of marriage in today's society is going to stay what it is now? We had talked about how biblically marriage is defined as a man and woman, and now society views it as different. And do you feel that it will just stay where it is now, or do you feel like there's going to be implications of it even evolving from that?
And like you said, me and Brandon have talked about this before, and because I asked, I've seen a lot of people on social media websites say, is this going to open the door to pedophilia, or is this going to open the door to zoophilia? And my personal belief is no. I think marriage, the resting definition will be that it's going to be it'll be love, or be between two consenting adults.
Right.
I don't even think it has to be love anymore. If people want the tax benefits just for the government deal, that is what it is. I mean, it's a loophole.
Right. Legally, they're not allowed to justify what love is.
Yeah.
But my issue is saying that when you change the definition of marriage, you leave room for more change. And people always try to leave a legacy.
Yeah.
And so people always push for more. So I feel like what's going to happen is, first it's love between a man and woman. Then it's love between two consenting adults. Then it'll be changed to marriage is just love.
Yeah.
And when it becomes that opens the possibility for anything to follow in those guidelines. And how do you regulate that? How do you regulate what love is? And when you can't regulate love, you can't regulate marriage. And that's my issue. And now am I saying that it will go to the extreme of pedophilia or zoophilia? I'm not saying it will. I'm saying it's possible. And I feel like people will push for it. Whether or not it passes is a different story. It is not an issue at hand now, so there's no need for it. Just like gay marriage is made prevalent within this last decade. It's always been prevalent, but even more so now.
Yeah.
People have looked for
me and Chelsea watched Cheers, the show Cheers, and even they had like a gay couple come in to the bar and they tried to like shoo them out, and you wouldn't see that on TV anymore.
Yeah.
The mindset has changed.
I feel like as the nation's viewpoints change, as things trend and change, I feel like it's not an issue now, but it will be. I think once this whole equal rights dies down a little bit, that's when you're going to start hearing other people say, hey, well, what about my rights as this view?
Sure.
And so I feel like when you change the definition of marriage, you open it up for more change.
Side question or topic.
Go for it.
I think it'll be funny to see the divorce rates go down. I don't know if that'll happen or not. I mean, because
how would it affect the divorce rates?
Well, right now I think the divorce rates are hovering around like 48%.
It's like close to 50.
Yeah, and so now that we're allowing all the gay, lesbian people to get married, I wonder like if they'll go up or if they'll stay the same.
It'll definitely skew the statistics because you're going to see a boost in marriage dramatically within the next few years because those who were not allowed to be married will now be married.
Right.
But I don't know. It would take a while for divorce to come into effect anyways. Like, you wouldn't even see the change in divorce rate probably for the next 10 years because unless people are getting divorced like 6 months after.
I don't know what this. I think the statistic says anyway. It's like 4 years. A year to the first 4 years is the main time people get divorced. So
well, and a divorce. Yeah, I mean the divorce rate. I think within like the first. It's based on age grouping and it's based on time together.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I mean, there's different ways to look at the statistic. Changing the divorce rate, it probably will just because you're going to see a giant boost in marriages. Just like a lot of people yesterday were getting marriage licenses right off the bat. And I feel like because they're pressing for that point. You're trying to make a point, and what better time to make a point than right after the situation happens?
Yeah, regardless, you feel it was a day in history?
Oh, without a doubt, it's a day in history.
Yeah.
And I feel like I need to make this point because people are going to bash on me for saying, like, why is it wrong? Well, the way I see it is, if you're a Christian, you're called to live in a Christian lifestyle. If you're not a Christian, you're not called to live in a Christian lifestyle. Just like if you're not Muslim, then you're not told to wear a turban. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, there's different kinds of structures and rules for different beliefs.
Yeah.
And so, when you hear people bashing on the idea of gay marriage, I think it's unethical to generalize it all in one sense. My problem is when you have people claiming to be Christian, denouncing that part of biblical understanding. So, like, they're saying, well, I'll believe in God or the Bible to this extent, but I don't agree with gay marriage.
And that's one thing. I mean, because honestly, that's one of the big reasons I identify as agnostic nowadays. Is I feel like even because on the in the Christian world there's a spectrum. I mean, you're not an extremist, but I'd say you're more conservative than some Christians.
Well, that goes with all views.
Yeah, exactly. And the Methodist Church, generally speaking, making assumptions here, is more of a metaphor based. I mean, where the Bible is more of a metaphor on how to live our lives.
Teaching you parables or stories.
Exactly. So, I think in your court, when the Bible is, taken word for word, that definitely, it's harder.
And it all comes down to how you talk about Scripture. And see, I take Scripture for truth because Jesus preached it as truth.
Sure.
And so, even Jesus can be seen as a metaphor.
Yeah.
Historically, he's been proven to be a real person. Whether or not he's the Messiah is up for debate. But Jesus, the actual person of Jesus, is historically been proven by the Romans. There's a lot of documentations of his existence, or at least stories of someone who was claiming to do such things.
Yeah.
But as Jesus was preaching and he talked about the Bible being the truth, I take it for literal truth. So,
and again, this isn't a Bible conversation.
No, we're just talking about different opposing views. So I'll say
Right.
this: if I didn't have the belief of the Bible or the rules or the structure of the Bible, what would stop me from supporting gay marriage, or why would you not press for it? And my answer is there's no reason to.
Sure.
Because if nothing is telling you that it's wrong,
Yeah.
or you're not seeing it as unnatural, then where's the opposing argument?
Right.
So I'm kind of confused by those who are not Christian or not religious opposing gay marriage, because I don't see where they're making their argument.
At that point, it is just discrimination.
Yeah, and it is just discrimination.
For the sake of discrimination.
And so I'll say this.
Yeah.
So a lot of people say you're not allowed to judge. Well, yes and no. We're told to condemn our brothers, so if he's a fellow Christian and I see him doing wrong, I'm supposed to confront him about it. But if he's not a Christian, I can't expect him to hold the same lifestyle. Why would I expect him to hold the same lifestyle? So my issue, I don't support gay marriage because of my belief, but my main issue is those who have the same belief as me and selectively choose what they believe.
So, I mean, you're still about love. I mean, love, acceptance, as far as
human nature. You desire for someone to be happy.
You don't
smile is infectious.
You don't your views don't make gay people any worth less or anything like that.
No, and I've said this before. All sin is equal.
Yeah.
And so I hate gay people just as much as I hate somebody who cheats on a test.
I feel like you're gonna get backlash for that one.
Hey,
but I understand.
No, and what I'm saying is I don't hate them.
Yeah,
because,
exactly. That's the point. Doesn't hate them.
The problem with gay marriage is it's a sin, and it's an abundant sin, and that's why it's talked about, because it's pronouncing your lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so it's no different from me saying I'm a liar and I lie about everything and I love indulging in that, or a murderer who is just like ISIS.
Sure.
Living in that murdering mentality. When you live in that sin, it puts you out to be a target. And so
I feel like it's funny because we've mentioned ISIS now.
Hey, now we're a target. Now they're going to attack us. Train of thought here. So I can't say that I definitely don't hate gay people. I have friends that are gay. I love them as my friends.
Yeah.
Right? But I don't support the marriage of it.
Yeah.
Just like I don't support people that lie.
Sure.
Does that mean I hate them? No.
Yeah.
Can I? Yeah, I can have that spite towards them. But just because they sin doesn't mean I hate them. I don't accept that aspect of their life.
What good does it do you to hate them?
Sometimes it's fun for others. I mean, I know it's wrong.
I
know the Bible preaches about hate and against it.
That's the answer, though. Yeah.
But
it's
if just because I don't support gay marriage, I would not correlate that with me not liking you. I don't think your sexuality should define who you are as a person. If it does, then you're not living right.
You're too sexual.
Like, for instance, that's like the same as me pronouncing my love for my wife and only talking about that, only being like, oh, I'm super masculine and I love women. You know, that doesn't define who I am.
Mm-mm.
I have other things that define me. So when someone's offended to the extreme when I say I don't support gay marriage, I understand that it's offensive to them, that I don't support them in that aspect, but they shouldn't take that as a personal attack towards their whole life. Because if all they are is gay, then they don't have much going for them.
Yeah.
You should be more than that. You should be a compassionate person. You should be a creative person. You should have aspirations for things. But if all you talk about or all your lifestyle is defined by your sexuality, then I think you're not understanding what marriage is.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So I just want to put that out there. Just because I don't support gay marriage, I'm not personally attacking people in a spiteful way.
Yep.
I'm saying that I don't agree with that decision.
And I feel like, you know, people on my side of the boat get so offended when you know, Brandon's boat says, you know, every sin is equal, and we bristle up, and because we think, well, that's not a sin. We don't think that. And I think that's...
You can't think of it as a sin if you don't believe in the Bible.
Exactly. So that's why I'm not arguing with Brandon over if it's a sin or not.
It's silly to.
Yeah.
Now, if we were arguing about what it means to be a Christian, and that was brought up, then you can debate, is it a sin or not?
Yep.
But
that's not this discussion.
I can't hold him to those standards. I can't hold him to live my lifestyle. Just like a professional chef can't come into my home and tell me to cook a gourmet chicken. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's not my environment. That's not my surrounding.
Right.
So it's not my place to tell someone to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I condemn those who are my brothers and sisters, who acknowledge the truth to an extent, but don't live in that extent. I think it goes against saying, when you're like, oh, of course God is our creator, of course the Bible is truth, but let's just scratch out this part.
Right.
You know.
And and we'll have to do one on Bible because honestly, I think
it ties
really
into most things anyways. I mean,
opinions.
Separation of church and state, there's going to be that conflict in every topic anyways.
Yeah. What do you have one more question?
Yeah. Do you think people are born gay, or do you think it's a personal choice?
I would say born gay. I can't, like, I mean, I'm a...
And that's the big difference for me. Go ahead, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a heterosexual male. Like, I am not attracted to men. I'm attracted to women, and I don't feel like that's a choice. Like, I don't feel like I could easily make that change.
My view is, I believe that you have the choice. My belief that God created the earth, I believe we were created with free will. I think not having the choice of choosing that infringes on free will. So you're destined to love women when you were born, right? I think that infringes on free will. And I think, too...
well, that would infringe... Well, I mean, that would say that... I mean, that would say, like, that you weren't necessarily destined to love women either.
I'm saying I have the choice to follow the structure or not, is what I'm saying. So, just like I have the choice to lie, I have the choice who am I with.
Sure.
And that goes with whether or not it's wrong or right is your prerogative. But in my view, I can choose to be with women. I can choose to be with the natural design and who I'm intended to be with, or I can go against that.
Yeah.
And it's the same aspect. I can choose to lie, or I can choose to tell the truth.
And like, I disagree full-heartedly on this one, just because I can't imagine like making a choice in my sexuality where I feel like at the end of the day, I hate to say it, I feel like love is love. If I'm gonna throw this out there, and I'm gonna get a lot of backlash for this, but hey, maybe Mr. Right's out there, and I just haven't met him yet. But I'm pretty sure that's not the case. So I
don't know. See, here's in the majority when you hear people talk about coming out.
Yeah.
They talk about coming out at a later age. Now you're hearing stories of children coming up and saying that little boys say they like other little boys or girls like girls. But for the majority, I feel like you're brought up, and it's just like how animals are instinctually designed to understand things. Like, for instance, when a turtle is born, instinctually it goes into the water. You know, it's just in their DNA. I feel like instinctually we're designed to see what makes sense. A guy's designed to be with a woman. To procreate, you have to be. And I think that's in our DNA. We just understand that's the natural course.
I understand, but I don't think we're hurting. I mean, if we were hurting for numbers, I could see where like a biological fact could be made that, hey, we're heading towards extinction, but we're at one of the other extremes.
Well, and I'll say this too. I feel like if the church honestly believed that people were born gay, then there would be no issue. I don't think it would be addressed as sin, because you're set up to sin. If that was the case, just like you would say people are born to murder. Well, if that's the case, then you're designed to sin, and that would mean you were designed to oppose God. And to me, that infringes on that free will.
I understand. This is one of those things. Like, I understand Brandon's viewpoints because I know his upbringing, and I understand what he's saying. He's not saying it.
Well, even on the scientific level, there's a lot of debate whether or not you're born gay or not.
Yeah,
and I think some gay people would argue that you are. Some people would argue you're not. I'd say the majority say they didn't choose to love who they love.
I'm still really glad it's seen into conversion therapy, where the conversion therapy was where they were pretty much...
The church was saying you're brainwashed and we need to correct the situation.
Yeah, I think that was doing more harm than good. I feel like if you know, a gay male or a lesbian woman feel like it is conflicting with their religious beliefs and they want to do something about it, the option should be there. But I don't feel like that should be a requirement. And honestly, there's lots of Christian churches now that are like reconciling Methodist churches that are very accepting of gay and lesbians in their churches.
And that's what offends me. I wouldn't say offend, that it bothers me.
Yeah.
Because to me, we have the same documentation.
Yeah.
We're basing it's like we both have a history book and we argue who the first president is. And we have the same information there, but you're saying George Washington, well, technically there was a leader before George Washington, but he wasn't refined as president. But I'm saying we're both using the Bible.
Yeah.
Now, there are different translations in terms of different understandings, and is it easier to understand? Like, King James is a different dialect.
Sure.
But it's not a different message.
Yeah.
And so that's where my problem is. Some churches are using the same book that I have opportunity to have, and they're saying, well, it doesn't say that. And that's my problem. It's like, yes, it does.
Well, me and you have talked about, me and you have talked about how Jesus specifically said nothing about homosexuality in the Bible. It doesn't change that. I think Paul
in the book of Romans addressed homosexuality as a sin, because in the Old Testament it was talked about. Yeah, it was in the Old Testament it was talked about as an abomination.
Yep.
And then the new structure of the world came through the New Testament.
Yep.
Meaning we're not told to live by the same structure as the Old Testament. So when a woman commits adultery, she's not called to be stoned anymore.
Right.
And so with this new age of living, a lot of rules change. And so people will argue ridiculous rules, like if you're going to say gay marriage is a sin, then you're going to say shaving is a sin, because somewhere in the Bible,
Leviticus,
they talk about that, but that's taking it out of context, because that was when God was calling his people to live apart from the rest, to pull themselves and draw their attention away from that. And nowhere in the Bible did it say not shaving was a sin. It's just saying, hey, you're my people, we need to draw recognition towards you.
Let's look good up in here, people.
Right.
Represent.
Right, you'd be a huge sinner doing something like that. But and so in the New Testament, people talk about, well, the Old Testament is old, otherwise we should still stone. But in the New Testament, in the book of Romans, Paul acknowledges gay marriage as a sin. And then this is where me and you differ. You say Paul is a human being, and who's to say he didn't put his own thoughts and insight into that documentation in the scripture, and say, well, maybe God didn't hate it, maybe Paul hated it.
Yeah, like Jesus maybe should have thrown that out before they...
Right. And I don't know whether or not Jesus could have very well addressed it. It could have just not been recorded. I mean, he lived 33 years, and everything he did is
that Jesus would not have stoned a gay person or anything like that.
No, absolutely not. I mean, Jesus, just like he said, he who cast the first stone.
Yeah. And that's my big issue with like the extremist in your boat.
Right, God hates fags, burn in hell. That is the extreme view.
That.
Yeah, and that's the problem too. There's a way to approach a situation, and there are people that ruin that.
Yeah, I'm glad Brandon is here, because he changes my opinion on...
Well, it's not... Why would you want to be a Christian when you hear all the negative?
Yeah.
Like, to be a Christian, you have to bash everything, hate everyone, and just completely butcher. Now, you're not going to pull anyone into the faith when you approach it like that. Now,
so here, I have one more question, but I'm going to take a tidbit on this one. Like, I mean, so a person, in your opinion, would say living in sin as a homosexual. I mean, isn't it still better for them to have some God in their life versus no God?
Absolutely, and that's the problem too. The goal of a Christian, or the goal of Christianity, is to draw people into a relationship with Christ.
Yeah,
and
Jesus didn't say, "Hey, you're a prostitute."
Right.
Hit the corner, lady.
He said, sin no more.
Yeah.
Exactly. You got to win people to the faith.
Yep.
And so I feel like, and that comes with approach and tone.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't bash people on being liars 100% of your life. You know people are liars, but you don't approach them and say, hey, you're a huge liar.
Well, there was a heavyset man that had made a comment on a social media post that you had made that said, if people were constantly complaining to me about my weight, I don't think I would go to church. And
exactly. And the whole goal is, how are people going to learn? Okay, I know that it's a sin because I have that background. Yeah. How are people going to learn that if they never pick up a Bible and they're never put in the church environment? You know what I mean? Like, how are people going to discern for themselves what they believe to be right and wrong if they're never comfortable to be in that environment to feel it out?
Right.
And so, I think when you bash gay marriage to the extent where you ruin Christianity, then you're not helping God in any way.
No,
you're hindering the church as a whole.
Yeah, and you're putting rocks in people like me hands to throw.
Because it's like, okay, so gay marriage is a sin.
Yep.
Then why is it a sin?
Yep.
If that's the case, people approach me. If I yell, gay marriage is a sin, I wish you would die, no one wants to approach me.
So weird.
Unless they're going to punch me in the face.
Yeah.
You know? And so I think it's bad on the church when you don't know how to approach a situation, and that goes with all things. I mean, we're trying to win people to Christ, and so, yes, we need to tell the truth, and we need to inform them what we believe, but at the same time, we have to get them to God, too.
Yeah.
Because what I say, that's all I can control. The rest is up to God and them. But if they don't have God in their lives, there's no way for him to discern them at all.
I'm going to wrap this up, so we're under the 30-minute mark we're trying to be. My last question would be, now that it's legal, what's the church going to do, or what should the church do? Do you think the church should try to push to overturn this? Do you think the church should accept this and find, ways to cope with it? Where do you think what is the church left to do now that it's made legal in all 50 states?
I think the church's main concern, at least in my understanding, is the press of them forcing to do things they don't want to do. So the idea of people being forced to marry gays because that infringes on our religious views. The same thing about abortion. For you to sanction that we have to offer abortion when we're completely against it is ridiculous. Just like I don't go into a mechanic's shop and tell him he has to offer dry cleaning. Yeah. Like, how are you going to regulate what our church as a whole should and shouldn't do? So I think the main thing that they're going to press for is just
clear rules.
Make it clear. You know, like, do we agree with this? No. But there's a lot of things that have happened that the church doesn't agree with.
Me and Brandon have tried this a couple times now, so I don't know if it's in this video or not, but if you're getting married to spite somebody, that's the wrong reason to get married.
Yeah, if you want to get married and you go to a church when you know that they are not going to support that, why would you want to get married there? Because a marriage is something to remember.
And make it a happy thing.
It should be sacred. Why would you want to make an issue out of it?
Right.
Then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. Yeah. But I don't think the church is really going to be able to do much. I think it's more of what the state or the nation's going to do to the church. The church, there will be people that press to overturn it. I don't think that'll go anywhere.
Yeah. I hope to see the churches not targeted. I don't think this should be something we should attack churches on. I feel like churches are going to accept it if they want to, and
there are that have accepted it too. There are, and there's some that don't. I feel like the church's place is to make it apparent what they feel. So in my case, it's my job to let people know I don't support gay marriage. Outside of that, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to kill you? Am I supposed to separate?
Both ways too.
Right, and that's what I'm saying.
We shouldn't, as a state, step on the church.
And that's my problem, because the church is called to step out of so many things, but then you see the state regulating the church, and that doesn't make sense. You can't have separation of church and state.
Yeah.
But you have the state interfere with the church.
Yeah, and I can't wait. Well, that'll be one of our next talks for sure, because that's a good point. Christians, are they being attacked, or are they being?
Are they being attacked? Is it rightfully so?
Yeah.
Are they the ones attacking?
Yeah.
So in terms of as the church as a whole, I think they're just going to preach. Some will just preach love like they always do.
Yeah.
Some will bullcrap it. Some will alter scripture. You're going to have a mixed bag. So I don't think it's going to necessarily affect the church in an impact unless it's said that the state can sanction churches to force marrying people. Yeah. And that'll be the issue.
Yeah. If we start threatening to revoke, tax, tax-free IDs and stuff like that, or I think that's when they'll really have a problem. I hope it doesn't come to that. I don't think it should. I feel like that should be left up to the churches to decide, what they're going to do.
Yeah, and so I feel like it's the church's job to welcome those who are gay into their church, and hopefully spread the gospel and inform them of their views. What happens to that after it's been told to them is up to the individual.
Yeah.
I feel like it's not the church's place to shut down and not welcome anybody.
Yeah.
That's the issue, because why would you represent God and sanction who you think should be in heaven and who shouldn't be, who should know God and who shouldn't know God.
Yeah.
That's wrong. So anyways, we'll probably wrap up the video. If you guys have any questions, write them in the comments. We're interested. If you want to hear more of this topic, we'll be more than happy to go over it again or talk about more stuff. If you want to hear any other topics, I'm talking about gun control, I'm talking about police brutality, military, talking about the prostitution industry, the porn industry. Because we have different views, you're going to hear both sides of the story.
And we've probably already talked about it.
We have talked about it. I know we have.
Everything on that list.
Just like, for instance, even taking things from the Bible, and what context is it? Thou shalt not murder. Okay, well then is military justified in the Bible? And we've talked about that. I mean, we've talked about anything. Or, someone who loves other people and has never known God dies. Do they go to heaven?
Right.
When they have done no wrong.
And again,
we've talked about that. I mean,
I don't claim to be the authority on everything. He's not either.
No,
these are opinions.
We do the best we can with what we know. I talk about what I know from my experience. He talks about what he knows from his experience. We're just trying to implicate what we think the average person is concerned about, what they want to talk about, but they don't have anyone to talk about it, or they're afraid to because they don't have all the answers.
And hopefully to demonstrate that we can do it in a peaceful version and that we have some
on camera.
things.
We're not going to punch each other.
Just wait. There'll be an outtake.
So anyways, you guys have a great day. Let us know if you want to see more. We have tons of topics if you're interested. Hopefully you guys stuck with us through the whole thing.
If you like the discussion, share it. Get it out there. Let's
and this is temporary, the backdrop. If this is something that actually does become interesting to you guys, we'll be more than happy to at least invest a little bit into a better backdrop, lighting, good shirts, real shirts. So just let us know. Thanks for watching, and hope you guys have a great day and a great discussion.